Hello, my name is Tom Simpson. This is a short recording concerning the basic protocols we expect of a phenology volunteer. So I'll get right to it and share my screen and we'll start looking at those protocols. Come on, let's go. Oh, there we go. First of all, welcome to the Phenology Program. It's really, for me, it's a research project, one that I think is important, but it's also an opportunity to work with volunteers and help them learn both plant identification skills, and just basic data collection skills, and anything else that comes along the way. So I don't expect you to be a super expert when you start. As you work through this and do it week after week, month after month, and perhaps year after year, you'll learn a lot more about plants and you'll contribute to an important scientific research project. The basic expectations, I'll go through each one of these points in more detail in the next few minutes. Use the correct data forms, which you will be supplied with. Visit the site at least once every 2 weeks. You can visit it every day if you want, but once every 2 weeks is sufficient, in our experience, to get pretty high quality data. You will find a route through the site that seems to explore the most plant diversity you can with a fairly straightforward route, and then follow that consistently through the season, each time following the same route, so you see the same plants and populations as they change throughout the season. We're asking you to record only 3 observations on the species that you find. Start bloom when a plant begins to flower, bloom over when its populations are starting to finish flowering, and opening bud for woody plants, trees and shrubs and woody vines. And we'll go over each of those in more detail. And at the end of the year, you're going to turn your data into me so that I can put it into the database and include it in our analysis each year. Walking consistent route is important because I want you to look at the same plants each week as they move throughout the season. That will just help the consistency of the data. It's a good idea with your route. Each route is configured differently. Perhaps you have a very good spatial memory when you find a plant that you only see in one place along the route, that you'll remember, I saw it come into bloom at this corner on that part of the trail. And then I can look for it in 2 weeks and 2 weeks after that to see when it goes out of bloom. Or you may need a little help. So I generally put just pencil notes on the data form if it's a species that I think I might have trouble finding. There are some GPS applications such as Handy GPS that can be useful if you like that technology and have a cell phone. That may work better for you. So whatever method you use, trying to mark the location of the more rare species so that you can find them again is a good idea. We'll send you a copy of the data form. Since this is, from every year, I've been studying plants for 35 or 40 years, depending how you count it. And I still learn something new every year. So I'm still a learner. And I suspect most of you have less experience than I have. So you have an opportunity to learn each year. And a good thing to do would be to look through the data form. There are both common and Latin names on the data forms that you can begin to look up the plants in a favorite field guide or on the internet, just to take a look at the kinds of plants you're going to see. That sort of preparation ahead of time, then going out into the field, and then going back again later and double checking it on the internet later. That's how you learn. It's just that repetition and thoroughness to the approach. And you'll find that what seems to be impossible at the beginning of the year will become possible. And then for at least some of the plants, even easy by the end of the year. The data sheet will come to you as an Excel spreadsheet. For those of you who really aren't comfortable doing a lot of manipulation of spreadsheets, you can simply print the form as we send it to you and take that out in the field. Frankly, that's what I've always done, is just print the form as I send it to you and use it. But if you want to resort it, there is an average bloom date column. It's second from just a little sample you see at the bottom of this screen. There's a sample bloom date. That's the average bloom date for the first 9 years of our project. And that tells you about when in the year to look for the plant. It could be several weeks early or several weeks late in any particular year. You could sort it by that, so you can do the spring plants at the top and the late summer plants at the bottom, or you could sort it by common name if you feel like you can recognize the plants and you want to be able to find them by the name you're familiar with. So you can sort them in ways that will help you. What I don't want you to do is to take any columns out of this spreadsheet, or add any columns, or subtract any rows to the spreadsheet. That will make my job much harder at the end of the year, taking the data and putting it into the common analytical spreadsheet I have here in my office. I would appreciate if you resort the data as I send it to you on the standard spreadsheet, and you'll see there are numbers in the far left column you can use to sort it. That's not terribly important because I can do that sorting also. Remember, the key things aren't to add columns or subtract or add columns in species. We want to keep the contents of the sheet the same. You can just rearrange the rows if it's more convenient for you. So I'll go through the three kinds of species that are on this spreadsheet. I call them first and second priority, and then woody plants. First priority are those species that there are 81 of them that were, when we first started the phenology program, it had been phenology program run for 9 years in the 1980s, and then it just sat dormant for a long time. 2012, 13, and 14, we reinvented the program. And at the conclusion of 14, I ran an analysis and found out there were 81 species for which we had data for all 9 years of the program. And I don't want to lose any of those species by missing a year. So those are the first priority. If you have any of these, we sure want you to find them if you can and record data for them. The second priority species are another 21 for which I have a lot of data, just not a complete set, but I feel like if we can continue to add information on those, we can start to include those in the analysis moving forward. Then there are the woody plants, which are trees, shrubs, and woody vines. Those are at the bottom of the spreadsheet. For those, we'll talk about this more in a minute. For those, the real key observation I want you to make is when the buds open on the twigs. You can also record flowering date for those also. Start bloom is when more than 1% of the population comes into bloom. Generally, this is fairly easy to see because when plants come into flower, that color strikes your eye, and so you notice it. And so we have very good information on start bloom because I think people easily see when things are coming into flower. One thing I want to look out for a little bit is that flowers will sometimes open up to where you can see the petals, and yet they're not fully open and really in reproductive trim. So this is in the aster family, one of our composite wildflowers, and you can see all the tiny little flowers in the middle. Here, this is the female part sticking out, and the male part is here, that brown part at the base. So all the sexual parts are exposed and ready to go. So that one is ready to be pollinated. Here's a skunk cabbage, slightly different plant. I can reach in there with my finger and touch the stamens and get a little yellow dust on my finger. So I'm sure that's actually in flower. I'm going to record when I see that. More than 1% of the population, I'm going to put a date in this start bloom column next to that species, whatever day that is that I observed it. Just a few other species. That's wild geranium on the left. You can see the stamens, the anthers of the spare pollen-bearing part of the stamen. That's opened up, exposing the yellow pollen grains. A few down here haven't quite opened up yet, so that would certainly be start bloom if I saw a wild geranium in that condition. This is trout lily, and trout lily is an unusual plant. The blossoms are sort of pendant hanging downward, and then the petals will reflex upward when it's fully in flower. You can see this one is just starting there. So I would say that's probably a few days or a week away from start bloom. This one is if I saw that, I would say start bloom. And bloom over, this is the tougher one to estimate for two reasons. First of all, when the blossoms disappear, it's often hard to find the plant, and so it doesn't strike your eye as you walk past. That's where locating the plants ahead of time and putting some notes down on location will help you then to look for that plant, look for the leaves and stem of the plant, and then evaluate whether it's finished blooming. The other thing that makes this difficult is that judging when 1% of a population comes into bloom is much easier than judging when half a population where the petals have started to wilt or fall off. Judging that 50% is just harder to estimate by eye. I'll give you a suggestion here for if you have several populations along your route, just periodically write down in this population, it looks like 40% have started to wither. In this population, it looks like 80% have started to wither. And then when you get to the end of your route, you can look back at those numbers and then estimate whether more than half have where the bloom is senescing, or where senescing simply means the petals and other sexual parts are wilting and falling away. Open buds on woody plants. So what we're looking for are the buds along the twig in woody plants, and when they begin to open. I've got an example here with black cherry. These buds are not quite open yet. They've just started to swell and some green inner bud scales. This bud on the very same twig, this one has probably gone several days past. What I want to see when I record open bud is some leaves or flower structures. The leaf structure here, and there's the flower structure standing out there. This is an oak. There's the flowers, and there are the leaves. Generally, you're going to see one or both, but I don't want to split hairs here. You're going to wait for the buds to open on a woody plant. When you see the bud open and you feel like you can see whatever structures are inside of that bud, then it's time to record start bloom. Just 1% of the population. And then you're going to return this data to me at the end of the season. You can return it in the Excel spreadsheet that I gave you. I mean, in the field, you'll probably be taking a paper data form along and putting your data on there. You can keep it on that paper data form to the end of the season and type it in, or you can, each week as you collect the data, you can put it in the spreadsheet. Either one. Again, saves me just a little bit of time if you resort the rows, the species rows, into the same order I gave it to you, but that's not terribly important as long as you keep that column with the number on the left-hand side. I can resort it in just a few seconds, really. So you can send me as an attachment the spreadsheet. That's probably the easiest and quickest way to do it. If you can't do that, you could take a clearly focused picture of each page on the data form. And this would be much easier if the data form is sorted back to the way it was originally sorted when I gave it to you, because I can't resort the picture when you send it to me. But if you can take a clear picture of it and just send the attached image as a JPEG, that would be that's fine. I can expand that and take the data off. It really only takes a few minutes to take the data from any one of these sheets off and put it into my own analysis here. So it's not too hard. So you can get that image to me, or you can drop the paper form off at Lost Valley Visitor Center. What I do ask you, we're going to send out a notice probably in the middle of October that asks you to turn your data in, because that's generally about when the last observations are made on bloom over. I'd like you to get that data form to me within the 2 weeks of us sending out that notice. That really helps me in summarizing the data. When things come in a month later or 6 weeks later, I don't know when to start my summary, and I don't know what data I'm going to get to work with. So getting it in properly, and if getting it in properly simply means taking the paper data form, putting it in an envelope, and bringing it to a Lost Valley Visitor Center. You can put it in a mailing envelope and mail it to me at Lost Valley Visitor Center. That's fine. I'd rather have you do that than hold on to the form because you really, don't want to get into the Excel sheet and you don't want to do that. And you sort of put it off. I'd rather have you just give me the paper form right away than hold on to the digital form for a long period of time before you send it back. I just want to get the data in pretty quickly and everything will be fine. Make sure your name and site information are on the data form. I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I've got a data form and I know perfectly well what I'm doing and where I'm doing it. But when you send it to me, I don't know where that data form necessarily came from. And if you don't, so make sure you put your name and site information on the data form. Well, thank you and hope you have a great field season. If you have any questions about this, you can contact me. I think my email address is out there. Almost every place you look for it. I've probably contacted all of you by email already by the time you listen to this. You can always contact me. You can contact Jackie Barrow, our volunteer coordinator, and we'll get an answer for you. Thank you. And goodbye for now.